Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Car on the Hauler, my post-race show, post-race weekend of Darlington Raceway. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify, I would appreciate a like, comment, subscribe, follow, share, do whatever you need to do. But let's get into some Darlington talk because we had a great weekend at Darlington Raceway. Non-official throwback weekend. We had some good throwback schemes out there, and we had some great racing all weekend long. I think the Truck Series race was a barn burner. The O'Reilly Series just kind of played for the course, kind of what we expected, an overall entertaining race. And then the Cup Series, maybe not as much chaos as some people were expecting. And we'll be talking all the storylines on the post-race weekend. But let's get into our weekend winners, our top 10 results from the weekend, and our points update. Starting with our weekend winners at Darlington Raceway, we had Corey Heim in the number 5 for Tricon Garage with a very exciting last lap pass on Ross Chastain to win on Friday night. And then on Saturday, we had Justin Allgaier, Lil Gator, the Alligator, getting a victory in that peach number 7 car. And then, of course, in the Cup Series, we had Tyler Reddick win his 4th race of the season, 4 in 6 races to start the year. A fantastic start, not just from him, but for 23XI in general. And let's move on to the top 10 results. First, we'll look at the Craftsman Truck Series. Corey Heim, like I said, very exciting victory, gets the win in that number 5 car. And then in second, we had Ross the Boss Chastain. Looked like he was going to win late, didn't get the victory. And then in third place, our first Truck Series full-timer, Christian Eckes, with a great run, had really great speed on the longer runs throughout the day. And then in fourth place, we'll talk about him even more a little bit later, but Caden Honeycutt was the class of the field all race long, still looking for that win. And then in fifth place, a driver that I think has always been a little bit underrated, and I'm very happy that he's getting somewhat of an opportunity with Spire, and that being Connor Mozak, getting a top 5, ran great all race long. Then in sixth place, we had Christopher Bell, C-Bell, who was running triple duty and finished in the top 10 in the both the Truck Series and in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. And in this race, he seemed like he was very ill handling at the beginning of the race, and they eventually figured it out a little bit more, and he was able to get a 6th place finish. Grant Infinger, very quiet run in 7th, but a great run nonetheless from the veteran. And then we had Gio Ruggiero, who was running outside actually the top 10 most of the race, ended up getting up into the top 10 late with an 8th place finish. And then Daniel Hemrick stayed out of trouble all race long and really does what I expect out of Hemrick, a very consistent race car driver with a 9th place finish. And then William Sawalich rounds out your top 10. I think he also came back from a spin, so great on William Sawalich. And then we move on to the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, where Justin Allgaier gets another victory. Great start of the year for Allgaier. He has a big lead in the points, and we'll talk about the points here in a moment. And then we had Brandon Jones finish second. I don't know what it is with Brandon Jones and Eric Jones. Something about being a Jones at Darlington just flows, because Brandon Jones always performs really well here. A 2nd place finish from him. Christopher Bell, I talked about him earlier with the Truck Series, gets a 3rd place finish in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. And then Kyle Larson in 4th probably had the best car throughout the day. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. But Larson with the 4th place finish, replacing Alex Bowman in the number 88. And then rounding out your top 5, you had Carson Quaffle with another fantastic run. He really should be in a junior motorsports car full time, along with Raja Karuth, who didn't actually get a top 10 this week. And I'm mentioning this driver every single week at this point. 6th place finish for Corey Day. This kid has a very bright future. He's going to be around, in my opinion, for the next 20 years. So get used to hearing the name Corey Day. Then in 7th place, Sheldon Creed had a great run. I think this is Sheldon Creed's best racetrack, and honestly probably didn't perform quite as well as he expected, but still a great run nonetheless. And then probably the best run of the whole entire weekend, we had Parker Retzlaff for Viking getting an 8th place finish. Was running around 5th actually most of the day. 8th is actually lower than where he was running most of the day. A fantastic race from Parker Retzloff. And then in 9th, you had Sammy Smith, who continues to put together great run after great run. And then Sam Mayer, who actually struggled a decent amount of the day, gets a top 10 and keeps in a good points position. Now we will take a look at our top 10 results from the NASCAR Cup Series, the Goodyear 400. We had Tyler Reddick get his 4th win of the season with that victory in the Goodyear 400. We had Brad Keselowski get a 2nd place finish. We'll talk more about Brad K later, but Pimp Keselowski with that 2nd place finish, winning both the 1st and 2nd stage, was great all day. In 3rd place, we had Ryan Blaney, who was really fighting a lot of different conditions, similar, maybe not similar to Tyler Reddick, but the fact that he had to drive through the field a bunch like Tyler Reddick. Ryan Blaney might have had the 2nd best car in the field. I don't think anybody had anything for Tyler Reddick with that 3rd place finish for Blaney. In 4th, we had Carson Hocevar, who was charging late on the really fresh Goodyears, but did not have enough time to get into that top 3. And then in 5th, another late charger being Austin Cindric with a great run from him. And then in 6th place, we had Ty Gibbs, who continues to put together these great runs. I think his first win is right around the corner. And then in 7th place, outdoing his old race team, Daniel Suarez, who's having a fantastic start of the season. If the chase would start right now, he would be in it. And then we have William Byron, the top performing Hendrick driver. Hendrick honestly struggled mightily throughout the day, and Chevy and Hendrick haven't looked themselves so far this season. We'll be talking about that a little bit more later. And then in 9th, we had Chris Buescher. Chris Buescher potentially could have competed for this win if he didn't end up having contact with Tyler Reddick coming on to pit road. So Buescher has to be disappointed with that 9th place finish. And then Eric Jones, even after getting spun out earlier on in the event by Denny Hamlin, was able to come back for a top 10. And Eric Jones is just so fantastic at this racetrack. Who knows if he didn't get spun out, where he could have ended up. A great race from that Jones boy. And now we move on to our points battles, the top 3 in points and the bubble battle for the trucks, O'Reilly Series, and the NASCAR Cup Series. In the Truck Series, we still have Chandler Smith leading the points. 2nd in points is now Caden Honeycutt, 33 points back. And then 3rd in points, we have Lane Riggs, 41 points back. And then we go near the cut line. We have Ben Rhodes, 7th in points. He's 53 points back of Smith. And then 8th in points is actually Corey Heim time, who hasn't ran the whole season, but he's managed to find his way 8th in points, 58 points back of Chandler Smith. Right now, it seems like Corey Heim's not going to go for the championship because he's not racing full time, clearly. But who knows? Things may change, so I decided to put him in the graphic for now until we hear more of a confirmation, I guess, on that. And then 9th in points, we have Andres Perez, 82 points back. And then currently on the cut line, we have Justin Haley, 83 points back. And then 6 points behind Justin Haley is his teammate of Brendan Butterbean Queen, 6 points back. And then 7 points back is Tyler Ankrum. And now we'll take a look at the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series point standings as we have Justin Allgaier extending his point lead, 52 points above Jesse Love. And Jesse Love's had a phenomenal season so far, but definitely his worst run came in Darlington, along with his teammate in 3rd in points, Austin Hill, 84 points back. And Austin Hill had a no good, very bad day, got involved in about everything. A really horrible day for Austin Hill. And then 9th in points, we have Parker Retzloff, who had a fantastic run in Darlington, 137 points back of the points lead. And then Raja Caruth, just par for the course, another good run in that Jordan Anderson, number 32, 155 points back. And then Sam Mayer had an overall decent points day in Darlington, 157 points back of Allgaier. And then we have Taylor Gray on the cut line, 174 points back of the points lead. And then 13 points behind him is actually his teammate, the driver of the number 18, William Sawalich. And then Brennan Poole is still holding tough in 14th in points, 16 points back of Taylor Gray. Now we move on to the NASCAR Cup Series, where Tyler Reddick has a commanding point lead. He has 325 points, and he's 95 points in front of Ryan Blaney, who's moved into second in points. And then Bubba Wallace, after a very tough day because of that accident with Denny Hamlin and Eric Jones, he definitely caught the worst of that incident. He's 120 points back of Tyler Reddick, third in points. And then we go all the way back to 13th in points as we have Carson Hocevar, 174 points back of Reddick, 1 point behind Hocevar, 175 back of Reddick. We have Daniel Suarez. Then we have Shane Van Gisbergen, SVG, 15th in points, 185 points back of Reddick. And then only 1 point back of SVG is Joey Logano, who had a horrible day, and we'll talk more about Logano later, 186 points back of Reddick. And he's actually tied with Michael McDowell, but Logano has the tiebreaker. But Michael McDowell is the first driver on the outside, currently tied points-wise with Joey Logano. And then 18th in points, we have AJ Allmendinger, who's 15 points back. All right, now that we've gone through the results, we've gone through the winners, we've gone through the points battles, let's break down some events from each of these races, starting with the Craftsman Truck Series. Once again, the Truck Series just put on a phenomenal show. I feel like it's almost always a barn burner with the Truck Series, especially at a track like Darlington, and it was great racing all race long. We definitely saw some aggressive racing. We saw occasional chaos for sure, but overall just a very enjoyable race, primarily dominated by Caden Honeycutt. We'll talk a little bit more about Honeycutt in a little bit, but I first want to talk about the driver-only broadcast. And I'm a little bit mixed about it for sure. I think I've definitely seen probably more positive things than negative things on the drivers-only broadcast. I would definitely preferred this over our normal Truck Series broadcast, but that's because it's been Jamie Little and Michael Waltrip pretty much, and it hasn't been good. It's been that's being nice. It hasn't been good with them for sure. So I guess I enjoyed this a little bit more than that, I would say, but they definitely gave great insight for sure. It was definitely entertaining. They had some good back and forths for sure. Austin Cindric was the MVP of it, and that's not a very big surprise. Austin Cindric's just awesome. He's hilarious, and he's definitely going to be on TV when he ends up retiring. That is for sure. Austin Cindric was the MVP of this. But my probably big issue with it was there wasn't really, none of them are true commentators, so I guess it makes sense. But no one was really being the lead play-by-play guy. It sounded like at the beginning that it was supposed to be Logano, and then Logano sounded like he almost kind of backed out of it mid-race or something like that. Because then they had Harvick trying to do it, and that's not what Harvick does. Harvick's not lead play-by-play. That's kind of out of his realm. That's not really what he usually does. And I don't know if they told Harvick that he's now doing it, or if Harvick just felt like he had to do it because Logano just wasn't doing it correctly or something. I don't know. So that was probably my big issue with it, was it just wasn't that great. They weren't able to do the play-by-play. Like I said, they gave great insight. There was a lot of fun to be had in the booth on pit road. So that stuff was definitely enjoyable. I enjoyed Stenhouse as well. I think that stuff was enjoyable, but you need a lead play-by-play, and there wasn't a lead play-by-play. It's not, like I said, it sounded like it was supposed to be Joey. Joey either just stopped doing it, or during some sort of commercial break, he was like, no, I can't do this. Can you do it, Kevin, or something like that? Because at one point it sounded like Harvick was trying to do it, but Harvick wasn't able to do it either. So I don't know. Overall, like I said, I think I enjoyed it more than Jamie Little and Michael Waltrip. I would definitely prefer that every week over that. But nonetheless, overall, I probably lean the thumbs down on the drivers only broadcast this time. Usually I really like the drivers only broadcast. This time just didn't do it for me this time. It just didn't really work right for me this time. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How did you feel about the drivers only broadcast this week for the Truck Series? All right, let's talk about Caden Honeycutt. Man, I'm a big fan of Caden Honeycutt. He is a great driver. I think he has a very bright future in our sport as long as he's able to garner sponsorship. I think he's definitely garnered attention but it's really all about sponsorship and money, which makes sense, but it's more about that than it is about driver skill, and that's why it took Honeycutt so long to really get this fantastic opportunity he now has with Tricon Garage racing Corey Haim's old ride, and he put it on Friday night. It looked like he was finally going to get that victory, put on a dominating performance. Probably should have been his victory, and it just didn't work out for him. Just didn't work out for Caden Honeycutt. Put on a fantastic performance. It would have been a hell of a way to get your first career win in the Craftsman Truck Series at Darlington, and not just a last lap pass for only led one lap of the race, or something like that. But a just commanding performance. There was clear as day who the best truck in the field was on Friday night, and that was Caden Honeycutt. You can tell in his interview he was quite disappointed in how it all went down. Just really feel for Honeycutt. I do think his first win is coming up pretty soon. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens at Rockingham. That wouldn't really be a very big surprise to me. But just great performance by Honeycutt, and just it always sucks. Obviously I loved the race and the ending was entertaining, and I'm a big fan of Corey Haim, and I'll talk more about Corey Haim in a second. But you always got to feel at least a little bit of something if clearly the best driver, best car in the field that night didn't win. I guess I feel a little bit different when there's two people so close, but it was clear as day who the best driver and the best car in the field was that night, and that was Caden Honeycutt. And Honeycutt's going to be a threat for the championship in the Truck Series. It's going to be Honeycutt, Lane Riggs, Chandler Smith seems like he has his name in the hat as well, and there's probably a couple other drivers that I could see maybe up there battling for the championship. But just a great run from Honeycutt, and I think he's probably going to win Rockingham. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back and wins Rockingham, but we'll have to see. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How did you feel about Caden Honeycutt's performance at Darlington Raceway? All right, let's get to Haim time. Corey Haim. Corey Haim in this race, I'd say he probably had maybe a top 3 car. I would say maybe top 3, for sure top 5, but debatably a top 3 race truck throughout the day. Hocevar, I'd say probably might have had the second best truck. Hocevar looked like he was probably going to end up winning this race. Looks like he was going to drive away and win the race. And then it looked like he might have had some issues with the truck here with a couple laps to go. And then all of a sudden he loses a tire, goes spinning around, and totals the race truck, ending his day. And you got to feel for Hocevar at least a little bit, whether you're a fan of him or not, because he's had some great runs at Darlington in the Truck Series, and to not win it once again this time, and looked like he had it in the bag. It looked like he had it in the bag, and just didn't work out for him. Ended up losing the tire. It kind of reminds me of I think it was Allgaier at Phoenix last year in the spring. I know it was Allgaier, but I don't know if it was last year in the spring or the year before. Doesn't matter. But that sucked for Hocevar, but it made it a very entertaining, crazy finish, because then at that point it looked like Ross Chastain was going to have it in the bag. Couple laps remaining. Chastain has a decent lead on the field, and then here comes Corey Haim, and then all of a sudden I forget who said it first. I think it was maybe Ryan Blaney. I don't remember who said it. I think it was Blaney who said it first in the booth. It's like, Corey Haim actually has fresher tires. I think he put on scuffs. And then all of a sudden Haim time is just like weaving in and out through the field, just moving, doing some Haim time stuff. And then he's probably, I would guess around a half second back coming to the white flag, and he just drives his ass off on that last lap, and then completely sends it into 3 and 4 and pulls a massive slide job on Ross Chastain and gets the victory, leading the last lap of the race. I really liked Chastain after the race as well. He's like, he was dumbfounded. He was like, that was blasphemy pretty much out there. Like he couldn't believe what had just happened at the end of that race. He had no idea that Haim had fresher tires, because apparently he got told over the radio, 5 cars quick, he's coming, he's behind you. And he looks in the mirror and is like, oh, okay, he has no chance of even getting to my quarter panel, let alone passing me. And then all of a sudden he's flying by him on the inside, and he's like, shit. That's one of those times where they probably should have gave him some more information. Maybe we would have had a little bit of a different finish, because he probably would have forced Corey Haim down lower on the racetrack or something like that. It could have made it a little bit more interesting because he just gave him all the space in the world because he didn't think he had any chance of even getting there, let alone making the pass, and he cleared him. So that was insane. Just Corey Heim continues to prove how great he is. I've been beating the drum when it comes to Corey Heim for quite a while now, and I think at this point everybody is. I think at this point everybody is beating the drum on Corey Heim because he had he had the best season in Craftsman Truck Series history last season. He probably shouldn't have even been in trucks last season. I was making the argument he should have went to Cup the year before, and obviously that didn't happen. And he's just proven himself, even in the few Cup starts he's had for 23XI. He's done quite well, I would say. I don't know when his next race is. He might be Martinsville. I'm not sure. I know his next start is coming up here soon. It might be Martinsville this upcoming week. But Corey Heim just continues to prove how much of a great young talent he is. He's a fantastic young talent, and he just continues to prove himself every single time he gets into a race car. He should be a full-time racer in the NASCAR Cup Series. I think he's ultimately going to be racing that number 35 for 23XI next year. I honestly think this is it for Herbst, unless all of a sudden he starts kicking ass, and I just don't see that happening. He had his best run of the season probably today. Not best run of the season, his best run at a non-super speedway track in his whole career at 23XI, I would say. And he was running anywhere between 12th and 15th, and that's pretty good. But for that being your best run, that's not all that impressive, I would say. But it was a good run. I'll give him credit. And he got taken out by Zilich in the race. So that sucked for Herbst. But I think Heim's ready. Heim is more than ready for the NASCAR Cup Series. And it has to be with a great team, too. It can't be with, no offense to Legacy, but I think he's too good for Legacy. Legacy are still growing, and I think they're better this year than they were last year, from what I can tell so far. But Legacy are definitely still a growing race team. Corey Heim needs to be on one of the elite teams, I would say. He needs to be. Joe Gibbs Racing is obviously never going to happen because he has a horrible. I don't know exactly what happened, but there's a pretty heavy beef with him and Ty Gibbs. So Joe Gibbs Racing is never going to be an option for him. Unfortunately, that's a team he's never going to be able to race for unless people are able to not have their feelings hurt anymore. And Corey Heim, I don't think cares. I think it's just Ty Gibbs and Joe Gibbs Racing that hate Corey Heim's guts for some reason. I don't know all the backstory on it. And then the other teams would be, of course, Hendrick, Penske, and now I would say 23XI. So one of those teams needs to pick him up. I think it's going to be 23XI. I'm hoping he's racing full-time in Cup next year. He deserves it 120%. But we'll have to see. But let me know your thoughts on Corey Heim time, and that fantastic move on the last lap and his overall just future in the sport. Hopefully he's in the Cup Series next year. But let me know your opinion in the comments. All right, now that we're done with the Craftsman Truck Series, let's move on to the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, as we had another very entertaining race at Darlington for the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. I think the O'Reilly Series always puts on a good event, really anywhere we're at, but Darlington is definitely one of those. A lot of comers and goers throughout the race, and there's, for some reason, always Brandon Jones up near the front. Brandon Jones had a great race. I thought I'd at least give him a quick shout-out because Brandon Jones just seems to always perform at Darlington Raceway. I don't know what it is about Darlington Raceway, but he always just seems to put on a fantastic performance. But another driver that had a fantastic performance that I really want to talk about is Parker Retzloff. And I've been beating the drum when it comes to him probably since he was racing at Jordan Anderson. Parker Retzloff's the real deal. Retzloff's the real deal. He had some good runs I think he had some races at JD Motorsports as well. I think he did pretty well back then for what JD Motorsports ultimately is. But Parker Retzloff is constantly overperforming in not the greatest equipment. Viking Motorsports is definitely a lot better than last year. They have a certain alliance with Richard Childress Racing, so it's definitely a better race team than it's been over the last couple years. Whether it was called Viking or I forget what it was originally named. Let me know in the comments. I can't think of what it was originally named right now. But Viking, they look good as a race team overall this season too, because Alfredo, he had to come from the back, and he overall had a decent run as well. He ran really well all day. But Retzloff put in a great qualifying run, qualifying up in the top 10, ended up running top 5, top 6, the majority of the race. The majority of the race ends up finishing 8th. Parker Retzlaff is the real deal, and he needs to be at a bigger team, whether that's Joe Gibbs Racing or Junior Motorsports or maybe even another decent race team. And it's nothing against Vikings. I definitely think Viking are a growing team. I just don't think they're they're not even really close to that level yet in performance. But they're definitely getting a lot better. They're getting a lot better for sure. Maybe he makes the move to Richard Childress. Richard Childress decides to bring on another car, maybe. That could potentially be an option as well. Just thought of that. But Retzlaff, he's a hell of a driver. He gets the most out of his equipment, no matter which team he's racing for. And I had a great feeling coming into this season for Retzlaff. I had a fantastic feeling about Retzlaff because of Viking having that connection with RCR. I ultimately knew that this was going to be Parker Retzlaff's best opportunity so far by a mile. Because is it grade A equipment? No, it's probably pretty much RCR hand-me-downs and some information. And that's better than what he's ever had. Jordan Anderson's also a growing race team. Jordan Anderson now has an alliance with Richard Childress, I think, as well. JD Motorsports, I don't think they're even as good as they were when Chastain was there. I don't think they're very good right now. And they weren't very good when Retzlaff was over there as well. And he got the most out of their equipment as well. I forget if he raced at Alpha Prime. I'm not even going to say that one because I'm not sure if he ended up racing at Alpha Prime or not. But nonetheless, just really impressed by Retzlaff and everything he's just been able to do. I've been very, very impressed by him. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about Parker Retzlaff's season so far and his fantastic performance in Darlington? Another driver that had a very impressive performance at Darlington Raceway was actually replacing Alex Bowman was Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson, young money. And I guess his pit crew pulled a little bit of a hung money on him at the end of that race because Kyle Larson was the dominant car of the race. Ultimately, at the end, it seemed like Allgaier really hit on some stuff, and once he got into clean air, he had fantastic speed. So maybe at the end of the race, Allgaier eventually had a better car than Larson, but throughout like 90% of that race, it was 100% clear during that 90% of the race that Kyle Larson was the best car in the number 88. He was the fastest driver on that day. And on the last pit stop, the pit crew messed up. Pit crew made a huge mistake, and it, in my opinion, cost Larson the win. I think Larson probably would have won that race. He would have had the clean air, or at least the opportunity to have the clean air. Allgaier had some great restarts at the end of that race, which ultimately I think is what got him the win, just having some fantastic restarts at the end of the race, him versus Brandon Jones. And Justin Allgaier earned that win for sure, but Larson could have gotten it. Larson definitely could have gotten it. He had a fantastic performance, and he's had overall a fantastic year on the racetrack, except for in the Cup Series. O'Reilly, he's looked phenomenal. Obviously, he had the high limit win in the season opener last week at Las Vegas. He's looked really good in everything he's gotten in this year. He's looked even good in the Cup car, but has yet to find victory lane. And then at the end of the Cup race, obviously had some issues. I think he ended up breaking a toe link at the end of the race. It looked like to me. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think he broke a toe link at the end of that race. Ended up having a bad finish, even though he looked like he was finally gonna get a good run. Looked like we were finally gonna have a good run from Kyle Larson at the spring Darlington race, and it just didn't happen for him in the Cup Series, and it didn't happen for him in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. Just did not get the victory. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How did you feel about Kyle Larson's day? And ultimately, the pit crew just let him down. Let's talk about Justin Allgaier just a little bit more before we move on to the NASCAR Cup Series. Justin Allgaier has the hot hand. He has started off this season pretty much perfect. A fantastic start of the year. And I don't know what else to really expect from Justin Allgaier. He's one of the greatest drivers in the history of the O'Reilly Series, Xfinity, Nationwide, Busch Series, Grand Nap, whatever you want to call it. He's one of the greatest to ever do it in that series already, and he still has probably a couple more years left in his career. I'm not sure if he wants to take another effort at really running Cup full time. These first 2 races in the 48 look like they've been a little bit of a struggle, but to be fair, Hendrick haven't looked themselves so far this season. So I'll give him that, and also the fact he doesn't really race. He doesn't race the Cup cars ever. He doesn't really have any experience in the next gen, so I'm going to give him that excuse at least a little bit. I'm not sure what he wants to do. I don't know if he really still has those aspirations to race full time in the Cup Series, or if he's just committed to doing what he's doing now in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, because he's the best at it. He is the best at it. He has to be the championship favorite. I don't think there's really favorites at the moment. I think Jesse Love's had a fantastic season. You can maybe throw him in there. But other than maybe Jesse Love, who's really a championship favorite? I think some might argue Corey Day. He's had a great year so far, speed-wise, and maybe he's able to figure it out by the end of the year. You got the Haas factory team cars of Creed and Mayer. They've had some good runs in them, but I don't know if I would necessarily consider any of them championship favorites yet. It's been clear who the best driver's been this year, and that's Allgaier. And it's clear who the second best driver's been this year. That's Jesse Love. Just a fantastic year from Allgaier. I can't say enough about Lil Gator, Alligator. He just puts in the work. He puts in the effort. He clearly still has a bunch of passion for it. That's one of the reasons why I like Allgaier. I loved his post-race interview. He seemed quite emotional getting the win at Darlington. And this is a guy who's won at Darlington a bunch of times. He has a bunch of wins in his O'Reilly Auto Parts Series career, and each win still means that much to him. And it's great to see Justin Allgaier. I can see why he's a fan favorite. A lot of people love Justin Allgaier. If you watch one of my other podcasts on the Pace Car Boys YouTube, Hit the Pace Car, my buddy Tyler, biggest Justin Allgaier fan, and he has so much passion for him. And I love Allgaier, and I hope he gets all the opportunities he wants, whether that's in Cup or if he just wants to stay racing in the O'Reilly Series. I don't think Dale Jr. is ever going to let him go as long as Justin Allgaier wants to keep racing. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about Justin Allgaier's start of the season and his performance at the end of the Darlington race? Like I said, had some great restarts at the end of this race and just ended up putting him in victory lane. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. All right, now let's move on to the NASCAR Cup Series, the Goodyear 400. They were talking for not just weeks, but at least a month, maybe even 2 at this point. We've been talking about all the potential tire fall off we're going to see at Darlington Raceway in the spring race. We're going to see all this crazy tire fall off, and that's exactly what happened. But at the same time, I think a lot of people were expecting a lot of chaos. I think I was even expecting a little bit of chaos, and I'm perfectly fine without getting the chaos. I just like great racing, and that's what we saw all day. But like I said, I think a lot of people were expecting the chaos, so I think there is a couple people that are disappointed with the race because they didn't get that chaos. But you have to keep in mind, all these teams and drivers have been talking about this for at least a month at this point. So they were all prepared for what was going to happen because there was a lot of tire fall off. There were shitloads of tire fall off. Those speeds really slowed down. So I don't know if they slowed down quite to 4 seconds, but 3 seconds and some change off the regular pace. So yeah, we had all the tire fall off. Just all the teams, all the drivers were very prepared for it, and they knew what they were getting themselves into. That's why we saw the chaos at Bristol in the spring. Was it last year? I'm getting my dates mixed up. It's either last year or the year before. But when we saw all those tires shred up at Bristol Raceway in the spring, and all the chaos that ended up ensuing after that was because no one expected that. Nobody knew we were going to have that much tire fall off. No one expected that at all. And that's why you saw Goodyear give them more tires, this and that, because then they had to do what they had to do. Here at Darlington, everybody was prepared for it. Everybody knew what they were getting themselves into. It was going to be one of those classic races that we used to see it in NASCAR, especially at a track like Darlington for years, back in the early 2000s, where you'd see a lot of comers and goers, a lot of drivers being like, "Oh, you can pass me now, but in 20 laps, I'm going to be back at your bumper, and I'm going to expect for you to let me pass." And that's what we saw. We saw that a lot throughout the day, and I just like that. I love that type of racing. That's the NASCAR racing that I love to see. Like I said, I don't need all the chaos. I don't mind a couple wrecks here and there. I don't mind a little bit of drama here and there. It's just all part of the show, I guess. But for the most part, I just want the racing to play out the way it's supposed to. Like if you ask me, and I've said this before, I don't like the stage cautions. I like there being stages. That way drivers get awarded points for running well all day. But I don't like the cautions being in the stages. I want just natural cautions. If there is no cautions, then there is no cautions. And that's just the way I've always looked at it. But I just like to have this sort of racing where there's a lot of strategy involved. We saw a bunch of strategy when it came to when you want to come down and take your tires. Obviously, we didn't see any fuel strategy. We didn't see anybody taking two tires. I think at one point we saw a couple of drivers stay out on slightly older tires. I think it was like Chris Buescher, I think SVG and Ty Gibbs and a couple of drivers did that. So we saw that. But other than that, the strategy wasn't, I guess, too crazy, but we saw some strategy. We saw some passing. We saw comers and goers. We saw everything I really like with racing, and I just overall really enjoyed the Goodyear 400 that we had. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How did you feel about the race as a whole? How did you enjoy the racing? How did you enjoy the comers and goers sort of factor? How do you enjoy the tire saving? All of that. Let me know. Okay, let's get to the actual events that we had in this race. I first want to talk about Pimp Keselowski. That's why I've been calling him since he's started walking with the cane. Big fan of Brad Keselowski. Looking to end that winless streak today. All the RFK cars were running the throwback Greg Biffle schemes for the event, which was awesome to see. And they all ran well. At one point, they were all 1, 2, 3. Priest ended up finishing just outside the top 10. I think he had a top 10 car, just didn't quite have the track position at the end of this thing. Chris Buescher definitely had a top 5 car, maybe a top 3 car in the race, and potentially could have competed for the win at the end of this thing, but obviously had the contact with Tyler Reddick trying to come down pit road. I think that was a mixture of both of their faults. If anything, it might be a little bit more Buescher's team's fault because no one notified Reddick that he was coming down pit road. I think that was a silly thing to do, and that really sucked because I'm a big fan of Buescher, and he didn't end up having the chance to win that he might have ended up having because he ended up missing pit road in that instant and was just a little slower on the racetrack. He still wound up getting a top 10, but Brad Keselowski, I think Buescher might have ended up, by the end of the race, I think Buescher might have been faster than him, but Brad Keselowski was dominant all race long. Won the first 2 stages, was looking to get back to victory lane. His last win was actually in that race back in 2024. That was the last time he won a NASCAR Cup Series race. He's only won 1 race for his race team and looked like he had a chance at getting another one. Obviously, it didn't work out. Reddick had the fresher tires at the end and went by him. And Reddick overall just had the best car all day. But Brad Keselowski, just a great performance from him, a gritty performance, I would even say. Just real happy for Brad K to get a good run like that. He's had a decent season so far. I think those first couple of races were throwaways, but for the most part has had a decent season, had some good runs over the last couple of weeks, and things are looking up for Brad Keselowski. He's moved in to what would be the chase right now, so that's great for Brad K. But I know he really wanted that win. He seemed pretty happy, though, in his post-race interview because he acknowledged and he knew that Reddick was the best car by a mile. Reddick was the fastest driver all race long, but he had to face a lot of issues throughout the race, but still wound up getting the victory. So Brad K knew that and just overall just felt good about getting the best finish he felt like he possibly could get, and that was second. And maybe his return to victory lane is coming up soon. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How did you feel about Brad Keselowski's performance in the Goodyear 400? All right, so we got the good news and we have the bad news. So we're going to save the good news of Reddick getting the victory for last. We'll go through the bad news first. It was a struggle bus sort of day for Smokin' Joe, or today I called him Slow Joe, Joey Logano. He was awful, completely awful. Joey Logano running outside the top 30 all day. And then also I want to talk a little bit about Chevy as well, but I want to talk about Logano first. Logano, I don't know what's going on with Logano. This is at the same time, it's kind of been his MO the last couple of years where he starts off the year really slow. And then once he starts to get going, he still has these bad races. He's either running 25th to 30th or he's competing for the win. And I just feel like Logano is one of those drivers. If his setup isn't perfect for him, if he doesn't have like the exact setup that's in his mind, he's just going to struggle. He can't. I don't know if he can I don't think he can adjust to different. That's just the only explanation I have. I don't know if that's true, but I just don't think he can adjust to a different driving style or a different setup than what he's accustomed to. Because I think that's really the only explanation on why Logano's been like this the last couple of years, where he's either competing for the win, top 3, top 5, or he's back in 20th or further back. And even if his car isn't handling the best, the fact that he's racing for Penske, one of the best teams in the Cup Series, he should be running top 15 every week. And I know that, and I said it last week, Penske has definitely gotten off to a slow start of the year other than Blaney. Blaney's had a great year, but even Blaney at times hasn't looked as good as I would expect him to. But Penske as a whole hasn't looked all that good this year. But at Darlington, Blaney was running top 10 a good amount of the day. I think if he didn't have certain issues throughout the day, he possibly could have competed for a win in this race, and he ended up having a top 3 car, and he ended up getting up there. And then Austin Cindric, he had a hell of a run at the end of this race, but overall he ran really well as well. And then Logano, I think, ended up finishing a multiple laps down outside the top 30. I think he finished 34th, and he didn't have any damage or anything. He's just bad. He was just bad. He was just bad. I can't put my finger on why Logano is like this, because this isn't the first time. I think some people are out there probably acting like, oh, this is the first time that Logano has done so bad and his teammates do great. This has kind of been a thing for Logano over the last maybe 3, maybe 4 seasons, where he's either competing for the win or he's outside the top 20. But today there's a big spotlight on it because he got lapped pretty early on in the event and just was never able to gain any speed and ran outside the top 30 literally all day, other than during pit windows. During pit windows, he probably moved up to like 25th or something. That was probably the highest spot he had all day, was probably like 25th. Like, he was so bad today. I cannot say how bad he was today. But let's get to another part of the second part of the struggle bus of this, and that was Chevrolet pretty much as a whole. Chevrolet and Hendrick Motorsports. I wouldn't say they've looked horrible, because Hendrick Motorsports have had some decent moments to start the year. Nothing, obviously they don't have any wins, but they've had some decent speed. But I would even say that Hendrick haven't been quite up to the pace as I would really expect them. I think I saw some comments from William Byron saying that they're just not necessarily used to the new body yet. They're still trying to figure out the new body that they're dealing with this season. So I think that is probably a big issue for Hendrick Motorsports and Chevrolet as a whole, because Chevrolet, they just haven't looked good as a whole. Trackhouse has struggled pretty hard, I would say. Obviously, SVG has had some decent runs, and he had another decent run today. All 3 cars ended up getting top 20, but none of them ended up getting top 10. I think Shane has probably been the standout over there so far this season. Chastain hasn't looked all that great other than Coda. He looked pretty good at Coda. And then Connor Zilic has been a complete struggle bus to start this year. To be fair, it's Zilic's rookie year. He's still trying to figure stuff out, but he hasn't looked very good this year as well. Trackhouse hasn't looked good. Hendrick hasn't looked bad, but they don't quite look themselves, if that makes any sense. RCR, especially Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch has looked awful. Kyle Busch has yet to finish in the top 20. I don't think he's finished in the top 20 all year. He hasn't looked good. Kyle Busch looks awful. He looks horrible so far this year. And then Austin Dillon, I think, has looked a little bit better than Kyle Busch, but he hasn't looked all that great either. The only team to me that's looking good at Chevrolet right now is Spire. I guess Spire might have figured out the body quicker than everybody else. That's the only thing I could think of. Because Spire Motorsports look like the best Chevy team at the moment, in my opinion. Carson Hocevar had a great run. I think he had a top 10 car. had the freshest tires at the end, so it was able to make him look even better than he was. But I think he was definitely a top 10 car. I don't know if he had a top 5 car, and I would say the same thing about Cindric. I don't know if Cindric had a top 5 car, but they both had top 10 cars and had great track position and the right tires at the right time. And that ended up putting them both in a great position at the end of the race. But nonetheless, Hocevar has been competing for top 10s, top 5s, wins all season long. Daniel Suarez has looked amazing in qualifying. I think there's been some races where he struggled, and some races like today at Darlington where he looked fantastic. Daniel Suarez put in another great run and is kind of showing up his old race team, in my opinion, at the moment. And then Michael McDowell, I think Michael McDowell has been the third best out of these 3 drivers, but Michael McDowell has just been running mid-pack to 15th pretty much every race and just really staying out of trouble and just maximizing his days every single week. And that's put him in a position where he's tied right now for the chase bubble. He's currently in 17th. He's losing the tiebreaker to Logano, but he's right there. I'd say Spire is the best looking team, while the other 2 drivers are currently in the chase. Hocevar and Suarez, if the chase would start right now, they'd be in it. And they look good. I think Spire are the best Chevy team at the moment. Obviously, Hendrick are still the best, but so far, if I was doing like Chevy team power rankings, Spire Motorsports would definitely be number 1. They look good. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about Chevrolet and Joey Logano's struggles at the Lady in Black? All right, let's get to our Goodyear 400 winner. And once again, we have Tyler Reddick. Tyler Reddick with his 4th win on the year. 4 wins in 6 races for Tyler Reddick. Michael Jordan was, of course, at the racetrack. I didn't even know Michael Jordan was there this week up until he started celebrating at the end of the race. I think they might have meant it like that on purpose, just in case if they didn't win or something, he can just go on his way. Because I didn't even know Michael Jordan was there this weekend, to be honest. I usually know when he's there. I had no idea. And he just popped out celebrating. I'm like, that's awesome. And Reddick gets another victory. He had the best car by far. And it said that he started on the pole. He led a bunch of laps and he won the race. So I think most people would be like, oh, he just had to like a normal day and ended up going on to win because he just had the best car. He had an insane day. Tyler Reddick had an insane day. I mentioned earlier he had the contact with Buescher when Buescher was coming on to pit road. But I think his biggest issues were his cool suit failed. They had to change the battery. At one point, he was purging the water in his suit. He was trying to get all the hot water out and get colder water into his suit because the suit was beginning to really heat him up and make him sweat more and get more dehydrated than he probably already was because it was a very hot and humid day in Darlington. It was mid to upper 80s throughout most of the race and very humid in South Carolina, if you believe that. It's very humid in South Carolina. I went to Darlington last year. Very humid. Luckily, it was an overall cool weekend, so it didn't affect us too much. But nonetheless, very hot, humid day, hot and sticky at Darlington Raceway. And for him to go through all of that and still wind up in victory lane, had to drive through the field, had the fresher tires at the end of the race, and that really helped him. He had, I think, 5-lap fresher tires than Brad Kay at the end of this thing and just went to work. He went to work and deserved that win very much. He definitely deserved that win very, very much. He just kicked ass all day and just, I'm not surprised at this point. Tyler Reddick is a hell of a race car driver. He's making up for what he didn't do last year. I've said it a million times at this point, but last year was a difficult time for him on and off the racetrack. I think everything that was going off the racetrack with his young son, Rookie, I think was a huge distraction for him and makes sense. That's understandable. I think that was a huge distraction for him. I think the court case was a huge distraction, not just for him, but for everybody on the race team, because everybody was probably wondering if they were even going to have a job last year. And then for them to come back this year as strong as they have, because Bubba Wallace, he's looked phenomenal all year long. He's finished top 11 every single race and probably would have finished top 5 today if he didn't get caught up in that accident with Denny Hamlin and Eric Jones. He got the worst of that incident. His day was over. Riley Herbst was about to have the best race he's ever had at at 2311 in a non-super speedway event. He was running top 15, around 12th most of the day. He was anywhere in that 12th to 15th range all race long. And he ended up getting turned around by Connor Zilic, and he was having an overall really good day as well. It was looking to be one of the best days for 2311, and it looked like it all went to hell. It honestly looked like it all went to hell because of everything that happened with Reddick, with Bubba Wallace getting the damage, with Herbst getting turned around. It looked like their potential fantastic day. This all went to hell, and Reddick just really pulled it out of his ass, if I would have to say. A lot of grit, a lot of passion out there, and a fantastic, well-deserved win for Tyler Reddick, winning 4 out of the first 6 races. The only other 2 times that's happened is with Jeff Gordon and with Dale Earnhardt. It's only happened 2 other times, and he's the third to do it. I've seen a lot of the talk online. There's obviously a lot of people definitely happy about it. There's a lot of social media, a lot of social media zeitgeisty sort of stuff going on out there where we're getting like Daily Loud and all these Twitter X accounts that don't usually talk about NASCAR. Once again, talking about NASCAR because Michael Jordan's out there celebrating. And that's one of the reasons why I don't mind seeing Reddick win 4 out of the first 6 races. First of all, I like Reddick. He's a great driver, in my opinion. He's easily top 3 most talented race car driver in NASCAR right now. And I think there's an argument to be made that he might even be second. It's Larson clearly number 1. And then second, it's very close between Christopher Bell and Tyler Reddick. But for sure, Reddick is top 3 most pure, raw talent-wise in NASCAR at the moment. I think Zilic, Hocevar, and a couple other drivers are probably not too far behind. But those 3 are just at the moment, they're the most talented drivers in our sport. So you have that. And Reddick, like I said, Reddick's a great guy. So I don't really mind seeing him get these victories. I've met Reddick a couple of times. Reddick seems like a great guy. Everything I've heard about Reddick, great guy. And to have everything that happened last year, like I mentioned earlier, with everything that happened off track, whether it's 2311 or his son Rookie, it's a great moment for him, a great moment for the sport, and I have no problem with it. I don't necessarily want to see Reddick go out there and win like 10 or 12 races, but for the way he started this season, I got to commend him. He's a great driver, and he's going to be a championship contender, whether you like it or not, because I definitely have seen a lot of people as well on social media very upset about this. They say they're already tired of 2311 racing. They're like, oh, they're cheating. We got all the 2311 haters, the Tyler Reddick haters, and it's not even necessarily 2311 or Reddick haters per se. It's just when there's a driver out there that's dominating, that's not your favorite driver, that's just kind of what happens. I experienced that myself with Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch obviously had a lot of haters, not just because of him winning all the time, but because he also was kind of an asshole. He wrecked your favorite driver. He didn't necessarily beat your favorite driver all the time, but he wrecked your favorite driver probably at one point or another, had some sort of rivalry with them. I would compare more of this. I'd say it's definitely a comparison to everything with Kyle Busch, but I think even the bigger comparison would probably be with Jimmy Johnson. When Jimmy Johnson's one of the best guys. Jimmy Johnson's one of the nicest guys in our sport. He's overall very quiet. He's never had a problem with no one. You know, he's Jimmy Johnson. He's one of the greatest drivers we've ever had, obviously, as well. But when he was out there winning a bunch of races, and I'm part of this. I'm going to say I'm part of this. I was also very young at the time, but I'm definitely a part of this. That we hated Jimmy Johnson, even though he's a nice guy, even though he's putting on a hell of a performance. Like he's putting on performances that we're never gonna see again. Are we gonna see somebody win that many championships in a row ever again? I don't think so. I don't think we're ever gonna see that again. Like he put on a certain performance that we're never gonna see again, and we weren't necessarily appreciative of it in the moment. And a lot of people hated Jimmy Johnson. They despised Jimmy Johnson. And I was part of that. We hated Jimmy Johnson because he wasn't our favorite driver. He was winning every championship. He was winning every single race. And the thing that made it even more annoying is that Chad Canales got caught up cheating a couple of times. That made it even worse. So I think this is what's going on right now with Tyler Reddick and 2311 is definitely a big comparison to what we saw with Jimmy Johnson. So I see a lot of backlash from the fans, a lot of upset fans, like big time NASCAR fans, not your casual fans, but your your everydayers that are just honestly butthurt about Reddick starting off the year as strong as he has. Is 2311 Racing cheating? I don't think so. What I think 2311 are doing is they have figured out something with their setups that the other teams just haven't quite been able to put their finger on yet. They haven't been quite able to figure out what 2311 are doing to have that slight advantage right now. And another thing on top of that, I said it before last week and I'll say it again this week, Penske overall just hasn't looked as good this season as they have over the last couple of years. I know Cindric actually had a really good run this week, but Blaney's really been the only driver that's done really great for Penske. I think RFK has actually been the standout Ford team to start the year. And it was very similar last year, if I remember correctly. Penske kind of really struggled at the beginning of the year, so maybe I'm worrying about nothing. And then Chevrolet as a whole just hasn't looked that good. Trackhouse hasn't looked very competitive. RCR hasn't looked very competitive. Spire's actually done quite well, and Hendrick have looked competitive, but they haven't looked as good as I think is expected out of Hendrick Motorsports, and I think that says a lot. So I think that's also a big part of why we're seeing Reddick do this. So I don't think Reddick's cheating, but I do think everybody's going to catch up. I do think everybody's going to figure out what 2311 have in their setups that everybody else doesn't have. It'll eventually get figured out. That's just how NASCAR works. Like if you remember last year, Christopher Bell had a great start of the year, and then he was still very competitive, but he wasn't winning all the races anymore, but he started off the year really strong. We've seen many drivers start off the year very strong and then begin to level out throughout the year. And that's because the other teams have finally figured out what they're doing. And it's just been a normal part of NASCAR for many years. I think this year it's just on the extreme because Reddick's got 4 wins already. So I don't think it's anything to necessarily worry about. I don't expect Reddick to go out there and win 10 races, but 7 races, for example, isn't necessarily out of the question. But let me know your thoughts about Tyler Reddick, his season so far, along with 2311 and his win at Darlington Raceway. All right, and that will actually do it for this week's edition of Car on the Hauler post Darlington. Let me know in the comments about really anything we talked about here today, even some things that I may have not mentioned throughout this episode. I think I covered a lot of the big stuff, but let me know anything really in the comments that you thought about the Darlington Raceway weekend. Even if you were there in person, let me know how your experience was at Darlington Raceway. I know I enjoyed my experience at Darlington Raceway for the Southern 500 last season. But let me know all that in the comments. Also, please like, comment, subscribe, follow, whether you're on YouTube or on Spotify listening, and let me know anything in the comments. Also, follow me on my other social medias at Trackside Larry, or if you want to listen to Hit the Pace Car or listen to Corey and Tyler's opinions on the sport, follow the Pace Car Boys either on YouTube or on other social medias as well. But I'll be back next week as the Cup Series and the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series head to Martinsville Speedway. Also, check out Larry's Trackside teasers. Should be out within the next 24 hours. I'm thinking maybe 30 hours, but I'm thinking 24 hours. We'll have that one out, whether you're on Spotify or on YouTube, where I'm previewing Martinsville Speedway. And then the Truck Series is once again off this weekend. We will see them at Rockingham for Easter weekend. But for now, I'm Trackside Larry saying peace.